So we're gathered for chapters 2, maybe 3. We'll see how far we get for the 7 cities of the book of Revelation. And we're right into this part. Everybody's been anticipating. Seems to be where the rubber is kind of going to hit the road. Now, as we look at this, remember that there are the conditions that we're talking about. The book of Revelation, I just want to remember, just remind us, remember I've got a word that you may not remember or you haven't heard before. It's preterists. So there are different ways, the interpretations of the book of Revelation. Preterists understand the book of Revelation to be in its first century setting, and all the events have already taken place. It's just a done book. It's a history book, but it's not a history like the historists look at it as a unfolding history all the way up from when it was given to John all the way up to the end times. And there's futurists that say nothing has happened in the book yet. Everything in the book is going to be in the future. And then we have the last one, are idealists, which are kind of different because they don't look at the book so much in terms of distance and time, but rather just in metaphor. They don't see the book as attached to events on the street, that it's all a metaphor, that the events are taking place, that these are stories to make us think about life, really. And then the structure of the book, remember, it's an epistolary book. That's just the fancy word for letter. The epistles of St. Paul, for instance, we say on Sunday, reading from an epistle of Paul or a letter of Paul. So a letter in its literary form the book in a literary form is a letter. Starts off as Jesus saying, write these as a letter to the churches in the 7 churches in Asia. It's apocalyptic because it is Revelation is apocalypse. Apocalyptic because it is specifically about the end times, about the last events. And it's prophetic because it is a book that talks about things that haven't happened yet and are going to happen. And of course, now we're into this next part of this, our time together, which is the 7 churches. So we're going to take a look at those tonight. The 7 churches represent conditions. Now, remember, right? The preterists, the historists, the futurists. So there are many different ways of understanding this. I think that all of us are going to go through a kind of a menagerie of understanding and questioning about, wait a minute, are we in the one-for-one graphic, hands in the dirt, or is this a metaphor? And we're going to vacillate back and forth between these, and we're going to be looking at it and say, wait, is this really happening in the church at this point in time? Like the preterists, or is this going to happen? Like the historists. So that's good. That's fine. We're gonna move through these things, and that's part of what we're doing. So the 7 churches also represent to us in a larger picture, the development of the church. And each church has an age attached to it that it is an image of and seems to represent. There's a fair amount of scholarship behind this, that the churches themselves, as they are described, seem to correlate to different periods in history, big blocks of time in history. And the emphasis of the problems in those churches seems to be correlate historically to these periods in history where the church had these issues as major issues. So we will tackle that as we go. Number one, there are 3 different aspects of this I want to make sure we all remember as we look through these other words, is that each one of these churches was a real church, right? These are the churches of Asia Minor, 7 churches, all within a 16-mile radius of Patmos. So they're right across the water from where John is. They have physical reality relevance, they have spiritual relevance, and they have historic significance. So keeping all of that in mind, I want you all, because I'm going to front load all this for you guys. Some more stuff. Ready for more stuff? When we're listening to this stuff, I want you to look at the local impact of what we're talking about. When Jesus is writing this letter to the local community, and you're in the local community, you go to church on Sunday, and the deacon is reading this letter sent to you from John. It has a real local impact. So you can think, as we go through this, what am I thinking as the person in the pew on Sunday morning, having been read this letter? What's going to happen? What am I being asked to do? What is my church being asked to do? The next level is for our church, the general application. I'm reading this right now at Church of the Creator in 2022. What if this letter applies to my parish, to me, to my grouping, and what can I do? What can we do? Are we brave enough to look at the condemnation as we are excited about receiving the reward? How does this come to me right now, and what's the next step for me? Personal relevance. So I'm jumped into that one kind of from the last one. Me as an individual, how am I? What am I feeling about this? And where do I find myself? And oh my gosh, did I just read about me in the book and hear it in the letter? That's the personal impact, how it is with me. And then the prophetic impact is a little different. It is any sort of personal revelation that maybe that you may feel that you have gained a new knowledge or a new hope or a new understanding of something that was unexpected to you, because the prophecy is ongoing and unfolding. So we're all a part of that. So, all right, let's jump in. We're talking about first city, first church, and the second chapter is to Ephesus. And remember, Ephesus is a church that Paul planted, a famous place. It's a place that has had a lot of treadwear when it comes down to the church. And Paul was in his letters very complimentary of Ephesus. Seems to have a really good, solid foundation. It's where John is going to wind up. Isn't that kind of strange? Does that sound strange? So you got 7 churches, little shaky, and Ephesus has got this great kind of historic connected foundation. And when John gets released to go retire, which city does he pick? Got to make sense, doesn't it? Goes to Ephesus. So Ephesus in this, I said it has a relevance for the ages of the church ages. And Ephesus represents the apostolic church, 33 to 100. 100 because that's when John died. John was the last apostle to die. So the church in Ephesus is the church that represents that first grouping. Philip went there, Paul went there. It's the first grouping of the church that received and stayed closest to the teachings of the apostles. And so it is represented as the apostolic church.
What was Ephesus' deal as a Roman city? I was trying to remember what it was famous for, and I thought I had it written down, but I don't have it written down in any of the 3 Bibles I've got here.
That's a good question. I had it written down too. Just a second. Let me see if I still have it right here.
Not the Temple of Artemis.
No.
That's in another one.
Yeah.
Oh, you made a good thing.
Yeah. Let's see. No, don't have it at the ready, but I can go back and find out. You have it in, somebody have it in the front of their Bible right there.
Do you have any notes on? Look at the front of Ephesians and see what you got.
Yeah.
Notes.
It was the most important city in Western Asia Minor, which is now Turkey. It had a harbor that at that time opened into the Kaster River, which in turn emptied into the Aegean Sea. Because it was also at an intersection of major trade routes, Ephesus became a commercial center. It boasted a pagan temple dedicated to the Roman goddess Diana, in Greek is Artemis, And Paul made Ephesus a center for evangelism for about 3 years. And the church there apparently flourished for some time, but later needed the warning of Revelation.
It's a crossroads. Everybody's got to
Yeah.
go through there on the way from here to there. Kind
It
of,
was a commercial hub.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I found it. One of the most famous cities in the Roman world, equally famous as a church. Ministered, okay. It's the area mentioned in the book of Acts 3 times, for Aquila and Priscilla and Apollos served there. Timothy went and came back from there. Strong historic attrition. Of course, John died there.
Yeah, when Paul writes to Timothy, Timothy's
Mhm.
stuck as a young dude leading the church in Ephesus.
Right. And you're right. Who said that about Artemis?
I did.
You did.
Yay!
Oh my gosh, you just like, the pagan temple. Yeah, Artemis and Diana are the same person. Artemis is the Greek and Diana is the Roman. She is the fertility goddess, and the activities around the temple, as you might imagine, were just lots of sex. And
that temple was in its way kind of like, the Colosseum, the biggest thing in the world like it.
Yep.
I remember seeing pictures of it, and it's like the Acropolis almost.
127 pillars, and they were over 60 feet tall, sculptures everywhere.
Yeah, it's a deal.
It was also regarded as one of the first, as one of the first true banks, a major bank for merchants. And apparently everybody had money there. People came from other cities to put their money there. Couldn't move it around like it was able to move around during the Crusades, which was truly the first banking system came during the Crusades. But it was locked up. You couldn't get to it.
They made a lot of money making idols too.
Yes.
Right, statues of.
Yeah.
And they were a center of witchcraft. They were very big into sorcery and witchcraft. Lots of gods there, as you might imagine. A very cosmopolitan city that had a crossroads for lots of different societies and cultures to come through and practice lots of stuff. And when you have that kind of cross-pollination of different world beliefs, people pick up and mix them together and then create new things. So witchcraft at a lot of different points in time in history is the name that's given to a menagerie of different beliefs coming together and forming one new, although kind of undefinable thing, always within the case of incantations and a belief in a spiritual power. So yeah, good. All right, let's see if we can start off. So who wants to go first? We'll read, let's see. These books are letters are written with a real meter. The first 3 are different from the last 4, but we can get the rhythm of it for at least a couple of them. Let's go verses 1 through 3. Who wants to do that?
I'll read it.
All right.
Write to the angel of the church in Ephesus and say, here is the message of the one who holds the 7 stars at his right hand and who lives surrounded by the 7 gold lampstands. I know all about you, how hard you work and how much you put up with. I know you cannot stand wicked men and how you tested the impostors who called themselves apostles and proved they are liars. I know too that you have patience and have suffered for my name without growing tired.
Oh yeah, okay. We stopped there because the verse 4 really makes a change. So let's go back up to the top. Remember, what did I say about the word angel? Do anybody remember?
Yeah.
The word angel is the Greek word for that is the same word as angelos, and it's messenger. So in the Bible, as we read it, it's always the word for messenger. And when we read it, it is because the translators have made that messenger in some of the writings, the divine messenger, an angel like Gabriel. So they said, a messenger came to Mary, and it was Gabriel. They put in, instead of putting in messenger, they put in the word angel. Very clearly, the angel is the messenger of God. But here, it's pretty well considered that in this place, it should have been messenger. And it's identifying the head of the church. There are actually 7 deacons that were set out. If you look them up, they're frequently just called the 7. Kind of seems like a comic book thing. But there are 7 deacons that were set out to go to the churches. And that would have been the person this letter would have gone to. Remember now, when Paul wrote his letters, the way that this was done most commonly was that as the scribe who wrote down what was being said would be the one that took it to the church and then read it. This is a little different because John is not taking these letters personally to the churches and reading them, but they're being sent to the messenger that's in the church that is going to read it to the church. The letter is not to the messenger, the letter is to the church. The messenger is going to be the one who gives the message. So this,
therefore, in the initial, it's like blessed to the reader, the poor guy who's got to deliver this letter.
Yep. So this is to the messenger of the church of Ephesus, write. So this is John. Now he's saying, this is so what I'm going to say. So this is just like saying in other letters you've heard, and God said, these are the words of him who holds the 7 stars in his right hand and walks among the 7 golden lampstands. So the 7 stars, of course, are the messengers, and the 7 lampstands or candles are the 7 churches. This is also in chapter 1. We covered this in chapter 1, verses 12 and 13, where it starts off with Jesus saying, this is what I am, this is what I'm doing. I've got these 7 stars and I've got these 7 lampstands. I know your deeds. This is verse 2. I know your deeds, your hard work, your perseverance. I know that what you cannot tolerate. Wicked men that you have tested, who have claimed to be apostles and are not, and have found them false. So these, of course, are people that have come. Remember, it's this again, it's a cosmopolitan city, and you've got people coming and saying, I'm an apostle. I've got the power of the church. I have, they're con men, they're flim flammers, right? They see an opening to make some money, some quick cash, or maybe just be taken care of, spend a week or 2 with a sore throat, can't preach. But in the meantime, while everybody's waiting for you to preach, they put them up and they line them and they dine them and they give them a nice place to live. And maybe they'll, find a little money along the way in a loose pocket. But it seems that the church in Ephesus is wise to that game. Again, being a metropolitan city, the people there are no fools. And they are testing these pastors, probably asking them to have some private conversation beforehand to see if they know what they're talking about. And Jesus is saying, I really like your style. I really like that you are being diligent and you're being wise. What was that thing Jesus say about being wise? Wise as a serpent and innocent as a dove. That your motivation for doing this is innocent. You're trying to protect the church. You're trying to protect the people from corruption being taken, but you're being very wise in how you're going about it. And I like that. You're tested those who claim to be apostles. It also shows that the church there is leaning on spiritual discernment. You can imagine somebody coming and saying, is that the new God, the new preacher? Something's not right. Something's not right. So there's a level of spiritual discernment that's going on to test the motivations and the reasons why these people are here. Verse 3, you have persevered and have endured hardships in my name and have not grown weary. So there are always and have been persecutions. We'll talk about those much later on, but there have been persecutions that have gone on. Of course, John is suffering those right now, right? He's at Patmos with how many other Christians we don't know who have been sent to Patmos simply because they were Christians, and how many others. If John was thrown into the arena and boiled in a pot of oil, which he was, just to get rid of him. A little bit of fun along the way for the garrison. Watch the guy boil in oil. How many others along the way were boiled in oil, or what some other form that was a little faster than heating up a pot? Ephesus is no exception. There's going to be persecutions that go on, maybe not that horrific, but there are still going to be bad things happening. And yet they're persevering. They have not grown weary. What did your translation say, Carol? He wasn't weary. It was something else.
Where was I?
What was it?
Let's see, you cannot stand wicked men, how you tested the impostors who called themselves apostles and proved they were liars.
Yep. And then what's verse 3?
I know too that you have patience, have suffered for my name without growing tired.
Tired. Okay. So really the same thing. All right. If anybody want to jump in with any of that, or should we move on? All right, on we go. So who wants to read 4? Let's read 4 to the end, which is 7. It's a very quick letter, right?
I'll do it.
I'll read. Nevertheless, I have this against you, that you have left your first love. Remember, therefore, where you have fallen, repent and do the first works, or else I will come to you quickly and remove your lampstand from its place, unless you repent. But this you have, that you hate the deeds of the Nicolaitans,
Yes.
which I also hate. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, I will give to eat from the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God.
Yep.
Just a comment.
Mm-hmm.
In this New Geneva Study Bible has a matrix in it of all 7 cities, and then the commendations and criticisms and instructions and promise.
Oh, neat.
And as I was looking at this, what it makes me think of is, do you remember in Pilgrim's Progress where the pilgrim is going along and he meets various people along the way?
Yeah.
And each one has certain virtues and or shortcomings, whichever the case may be. And it sort of like maybe each one of these cities is supposed to illustrate a virtue or
Sure.
in one case shortcoming.
Yeah.
Well, I think they're all a balance. You're doing this really great, but oops.
Mm-hmm.
So is this using these 7 cities as sort of an allegory to make a point?
Right. Yep.
Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, that's part of what I was saying. And the way that we look at the literary understanding was how we look at the idealists in that group. Remember, as I said, the preterists and the historists and the futurists, and then the idealists. So the idealists, the bottom group, would say that's all this is. There's no other relationship to it. It's not really a real place, and it was just talking about a place, but it was using the place as a placeholder for just metaphor. So yeah, absolutely. And we're gonna, like what I was saying, we're gonna see these ideas of this and the connection, what kind of waft and wane as we go through to say where are we finding these things fitting, the metaphor that's being used, the language being used, or is this an actual description of something concrete that we can grab a hold of? Yeah, so using the city as a whole as an example of something, absolutely. It's all and. Yeah, I think that identifying where I stand, thinking about I'm coming at this as a preterist, or I'm coming at this as a futurist, and knowing that, I think that's really important, because in the process of doing this, we can stretch ourselves to say, well, I know that I'm coming at this way, but I think I want to try to see it from this other direction, this other perspective. Or I see how this fits in this, and I'm really comfortable with this here. But I also notice that this really does sound like it's talking about something very concrete, the rubber on the road, and then being open to hearing it differently. So absolutely, Steve, absolutely.
And also a question.
Yeah.
Who were the Nicolaitans?
Yes, we'll definitely get to him. or the it. It's because there's two views on what that means, but they really come out the same. And it's going to come up twice because there's another church that has the same issue, and that's talked about again. So we'll jump back on the wagon here. We'll get there in just a second. Okay, so God says in 4, yet I hold this against you. You have forsaken your first love. What's the first love? Anybody?
God.
Yes, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So Jesus is saying that when the church was planted in Ephesus, when Paul brought this news to you, you guys just leapt up and took it. You were excited and you were interested, and the church took off and people were meeting and it was incredible. And we have the stories about it. We all know that. And of course, Jesus is saying, I know that more than anybody because I'm receiving your prayers. So I am the one who can tell you're not doing that anymore. You have forsaken your first love. You're not doing this for me. You're not doing this for God. You're still doing it, but you're not doing it for your first love. You're not doing it for God.
It sounds to me like they are tired and they are burnt out.
Yeah.
Is this a case of like the new convert is enthusiastic and ready to go and all that, and then as the new convert starts to they just start to cool off a little bit?
I don't know. The way that the letter starts off with Jesus saying you guys you're still on the horse, you're still trying, you're still working, you haven't grown tired, you're still going. I think it may be that they're still going, but they don't even know that they're running on fumes, that they are now doing this stuff like, we have to go down to the soup kitchen and we have to get the soup together and we have to give it to those people because those people need to be fed. That's absolutely true. But if you back up a year and a half, the same people were saying, we got to go down to the soup kitchen and feed these people because God wants everyone to be cared for, and God's called us to care for them, and we need to be there for these people because it's what Jesus would have us do. So I have the same energy and I have the same drive, but that whole component about God being my motivation and my purpose has kind of faded out. So now I'm doing it because it's just the right thing to do, and it's what I do, and I'm excited about doing it. But I've left God behind, and I'm not looking at him anymore. So Jesus is saying, you're still towing the line, you're still doing it, but you have lost me in the process. So I'm holding it against you because this is and the church has lots of teachers. St. Augustine wrote about this a lot. There's a lot of the mystical theologian reflections throughout the monastic community that talk about this a lot. You can imagine this comes up in the monastic communities in the Middle Ages all the time, and they're pretty brutal about it with each other. They simply say this is not an event of time. This is not an event of place. This is absolutely an event of will. And I think we've talked before. I think it was in our Bible study in Ephesians. No, it was on Thessalonians. We were talking about it because they had Paul was talking about basically the habit, the getting out of the habit. So people say, I pray 4 times a day. Well, I don't need to pray now because I prayed twice already and I'm tired. And then the next day it's I don't need to pray now because I prayed once and I'm tired. And then the next day I'm not praying in the morning, but I'll do it later on. And then later on it's like I didn't even think about it. It's time for bed. And then pretty soon, warp ahead 3 months and I'm not praying at all, but I'm okay because I'm close to God. And it's just this slope that just bottoms out. And pretty soon you're not doing it anymore. And the excuse is, well, time. And here Jesus is saying, nope, no, it's not. It's will. It's will. You did it. You are not doing it, and it's a matter of will. You know, you can get up and do other things just fine, and you do that because you will, but you're not doing this. So don't say it just happened. It just happened. Remember the height from which you have fallen, verse 5. So he's saying, you were so close to me. You were so close to me. Do you remember this, guys? Do you remember when you felt me, when we were together? Remember that height. Repent and do the things you did at first. Come back and be the person that you were. Will yourself to be this person again. Will me back into your life. Will this relationship. And then, of course, the warning. If you do not repent, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place. The church will go away.
I'll come and take your lampstand away if you don't repent.
Yes. Yeah. Not a lot of wiggle room.
Repent and get in cahoots with God. They don't have any light anymore. They
That's
aren't
right.
the lampstand.
Yeah. The lamp is a fake lamp if it's anything. So he's saying, gone. No more. Nothing for you. Okay, 6. Here you go, Steve. But you have this in your favor. Little booster there. You hate the practices of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. So who are the Nicolaitans? Well, there's 2 different schools of thought about the Nicolaitans. One is the word, you take the word Nicolaitan and you break it up, it's Nicolaia, which is translated in English as Nike. And yes, it is the shoe. So the word Nike is victory. So Nicolaitans or to conquer. So Nike is conquering, and elation is laity, is the laos.
Wasn't Nike I can't remember what he was the god of. Wasn't he a god of something?
Oh, I don't know.
He's a
That's good.
runner.
If it's a god, that's probably Greek, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a word that talked about that people said, well, this is the Nicolaitans are a movement where a few people had all the power over everybody else. It was a corrupted hierarchical movement. And if you read some stuff about this church, you'll hear that. But there's another one. And the other one was that there was a deacon. Remember I mentioned the 7 deacons? It just so happens that the deacon that was sent to Ephesus' name was Nicholas. What do you think of that? And Nicholas was a very charismatic. We don't have a lot of information about the deacons. There's only 3 that we really know anything about. The rest of them are just names on a page. But Nicholas, there's a lot written about him, maybe because he went to Ephesus, and Ephesus was a real going concern, and they wrote down stuff. He was charismatic. He preached, he taught, he did stuff, but he did that all based on instruction. So somebody else told him a story, and then he preached the story, and he did a great job. At some point, he decided that he knew all this stuff, and he was just going to go out on his own and start preaching and teaching, but he didn't know all this stuff. And so he wound up lighting into a heresy and producing a very heretical process. In fact, now think about where he was, right? Artemis and Diana, according to one of the accounts that was put out by, oh gosh, what was his name? He was a Christian chronicler. He said that Nicholas had a very, very beautiful wife, and that he felt that he was being selfish, that it was a selfish thing, that he was breaking faith with God because he was keeping his wife all to himself.
Isn't that what the 10 Commandments say you're supposed to do?
Yeah, it starts getting really squirrely really fast. So remember Temple of Artemis, okay? So he set her free to do what she needed to do, and then he would partake with that and say that was God's intention, that we are to share and share alike, basically. So the Nicolaitans started to bring into the church these views that were very obviously Greek views of free love and the temple of Artemis and Diana.
They're sharing and then they're sharing.
Yes. So that's really where most people come down, that this was a heresy, heretical teachings by Nicholas, the Nicolaitans, and it left Ephesus. It got off away from Ephesus, and there were Nicolaitans that turned up in other churches. And we're going to hear about those later on. So that's who Nicholas is, and that's who the Nicolaitans were. They really was just a free love heresy that infected the church and began to corrupt the way the church understood itself and saw itself. So no secret why Jesus said, I hate that.
And Jesus must have hated the 60s too.
Yeah, not his idea of a good time, I don't think. He who has an ear, let him hear. Did we read the last bit? I think we did. He who has ear, let him hear. Now this is, remember Matthew 11:15? Jesus says exactly the same thing more than once. He says, those who have ears, let them hear. Those who have eyes, let them see. Remember now when Jesus said that in Matthew, and remember when he says it here, while he's writing a letter to the church. So this is that, remember I said when we hear it, we have to hear it in these different ways, one for the church, one for us personally. When he's saying those who have ears, he's not saying the church hears. He's saying to each individual, you need to hear this lesson for yourself. Everything that I've spoken to the church, you need to hear it for you. Those who have ears, let them hear. And what the Spirit says to the churches, to him who overcomes, I will give the right to eat from the tree of life, which is in paradise of God. That's a little interesting addition on the end, isn't it? If you'll notice, back in the beginning, Jesus starts off this letter by saying, these are the words of him who holds the 7 stars in his right hand and walks among the 7 golden lampstands. And these from beginnings are going to change by letter with something special for that church. So this thing, the words of the one who holds the 7 stars in his right hand and walks among the 7 golden lampstands. This is saying, this is the witness to the church in Ephesus that Jesus is the one from the very beginning who has ordained this process and controls all of it. That this is a divine image of power and authority, and does not want them to mistake who it is that's talking to them. And ends this by saying, and I will give them the right to eat from the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. So remember when Adam and Eve got kicked out of the garden, right? And they were, at that time, God didn't close up, didn't disappear the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden was still there. And so remember what God did after he kicked them out of the garden?
He stuck the angels with the flaming swords to kind of like repress them.
Yes, he put the angels at the gate. He did put up a fence, and he put the angels there so that the Adam and Eve couldn't get back in and eat of one particular tree. What tree was it?
Tree of life.
The tree of life. And why would God care about that? I mean, they already ate from the tree of good and evil. Why would we make a big deal about eating from the tree of life?
They would be like us.
Well, they would be worse than us. They would be eternally alive, tree of life, but they would be eternally alive in their sin. To eat from the tree of life after eating from the tree of good and evil would be a condemnation to sin forever. So God said, I will not trap you or see you trapped in this condition. So you can't come back and eat from the tree of life. Now Jesus is saying, I'm going to give you, opening up the tree of life to you, which is you're going to be cleansed. You're going to be cleansed from all your sin and all this terrible stuff that's going to happen. And I'm going to give you the tree of life to eat from. And of course, the illusion we have in Scripture and the metaphor we have in Scripture is that Jesus is the tree of life. Eat of this bread and you will live forever. Drink of this wine, drink of this blood. He is the tree. When the end of all things, he's going to be the tree, not the tree, but the tree. All right, let's see. On to, amazing, we're into Smyrna. We can hit some of it at least. We're at 18 minutes after. All right, who wants to read Smyrna? Let's go up through.
Smyrna is a big time port, and it's the home of Homer. Woohoo!
Ooh, Homer, claim to fame.
Yeah.
Let's go down to. Let's go down to read 8, 9, and. Well, that's a big one. Oh gosh, 8, 9, and 10. I guess let's just take a big chunk. Who wants to read that?
I can read it.
You do it.
All right, it's Cheryl. Okay, so to the angel of the church in Smyrna, write, these are the words of him who is the first and the last, who died and came to life again. I know your afflictions and your poverty, yet you are rich. I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution for 10 days. Be faithful, even to the point of death, and I will give you life as your victor's crown. Whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. The one who is victorious will not be hurt at all by the second death.
Phew, that's a whole letter. Holy crud, so fast. All right, so a little bit about Smyrna. This Smyrna is the second from the 2nd to the 4th century. This is the second age of the church. So Ephesus was the first age. That was the church of the apostles. Smyrna is the second age of the church, and between these years of 200 and 400, this is, or 100 and 400, this is the persecuted church. This is the period when so many Christians are being killed, boiled, hung in this lit on fire. Remember Nero fiddled on his balcony to the beautiful glow of his vineyard and his courtyard, but they were being. The glow that he was enjoying was all the Christians that were on stakes that were dipped in tar and lit on fire to light his yard. So this is the persecuted church. City of Alexander the Great founded Smyrna. It's a seaport and commerce. It was a major producer, very rich city. They were one of the major, if not the greatest producer of myrrh. We all remember myrrh, frankincense and myrrh. It was used, of course, very expensive for perfume for the super rich and famous, and it was used for anointing at church, at temple, and in royal services. And of course, we also know it because myrrh was a ointment that was put on the body when the person died. The Jewish system, remember, is not embalming; it's the opposite. The different aloes and ointments they put on the body are meant to break the body down. It was a city of some dubious events. Polycarp was burned at the stake there, an 80-year-old first bishop of Smyrna, and had done so well until the persecutions came and they grabbed him and took him out and burned him at the stake. It is Izmir, Turkey is the name of it today. And if you think of the name, ready? Smyrna is got myrrh in the middle of it. So the city is literally named after myrrh. Okay. To the angel of the church, so we have to the messenger of the church of Smyrna, write. These are the words of him who is first and last, who died and came to life again. Really important. Now remember, this is different from the first one. The first one in Ephesus, it was the 7 stars and the 7 lampstands. But to this one, Jesus is saying, these are the words of him who is first and last and died and came to life again. So this is going to have something to do with the rest of the letter, with what's coming up. Not dead, but alive, right? The last who died and came like 9, I know your afflictions and your poverty, yet you are rich. I know the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. So people were dying in this place in Smyrna. They were being killed for their faith. They were being killed because they were Christians. They were being taken out in the middle of the night. And so Jesus starts off this letter by saying, I am the first and the last, and though I was dead, I will live. So he's saying, I am the God who makes you live. So do not fear death. Death is not the end for you. I am the God who died. I am the God who lives, and you will live with me. So that's why we had a change in the beginning of this letter. You're in poverty. There's a real oppression to the church here. And he's saying you don't have much. You don't have houses. You're not like Ephesus. You haven't got great places to live and great stuff to do. But you are rich in your faith. The riches that you have are not material, they are spiritual, and you are rich in your spirit. So there is a compliment here that Jesus is giving, that there is a deep relationship of dependence on Christ, and that's great. And then we have this really radical thing, which we're going to hear this again later on in another letter, and that is the thing about the Jews. I know the slander of those who say they are Jews, but they are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Huge thing, heavy thing to say. So there's two ways of understanding this. One, of course, this is not all Jews. This is not saying that all the Jews are are from Satan. This is simply the synagogue in Smyrna that we're talking about, right? And these Jews are not obeying even their own Jewish faith. They are not doing what they're doing because of God. So apparently the Jews in this synagogue are actively pursuing and persecuting the Christians. And they are doing it because they're saying that they are following Yahweh, they're following their God. But Jesus knows that is not true. This is a vindictive, evil thing that they are doing. They are, perhaps, when I first read this years ago, I thought, in my mind, the image came of, accusations against families and children and babies being taken away and people being killed by these Jews who are doing this not because they are good Jewish people trying to protect their faith. They're doing it because they are just bad people. And apparently this is what Jesus is talking about. So this is a synagogue of Satan. What a catchy little phrase that is. Do not be afraid of what you're about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution for 10 days. Be faithful even unto the point of death, and I will give you a crown of life. So then we have this back again to the beginning of this letter. Remember? I keep saying this over and over. I am the first and the last, the one who died and came back to life. And he's saying, and at the bottom here, they may kill you, these people. But remember who I am. Because your faith is grounded in me. You're poor in your possessions, but you are rich in your faith. Let that richness carry you forward through this persecution. I will not leave you bereft. I will take care of you. You will live on, even if it means dying at the hands of these evil people. Keep your faith. Don't give up. Now, what's this thing about the 10 days? This is a problem. There's been a lot of different discussion about this. Obviously, this didn't happen in 10 days, and they're thinking, well, is it 10 days for some ones? We don't know. So one of the ideas that has come out of this is this phrase 10 days is as a strange construction in Greek of the word to say 10 days. And so they're saying maybe what we're really talking about here is 10 events. And it just so happens that there are 10 emperors. What a perfect number, right? Not 9, not 11, 10 emperors that were known to be major persecutors of the Christians and killed more and more and more. And they would have to go through these 10 seasons. And they are Nero, already talked about him. Domitian, that's actually, the mission is the emperor who imprisoned John. So it was the persecution there under Domitian's persecution right at the minute. Trajan would come along later on, and he was the one that would burn Ignatius of Antioch, or killed Ignatius of Antioch, the bishop who was taken all the way across from Asia to Rome in a wagon. We have 7. Go figure, huh? He wrote 7 letters to the churches along the way of this multi-month long wagon ride, and encouraging the church all the way along this wagon ride to Rome, where they're going to feed him to the lions. That was Trajan. Marcus Aurelius, does that sound familiar? Who's Marcus Aurelius? Come on, who is he? No Russell Crowe lovers here? Remember, Marcus Aurelius is
Gladiator.
a Gladiator movie. Yeah, put Russell Crowe on the map. And he is a wonderful character in that movie. But that's not the Marcus Aurelius of history. Marcus Aurelius became emperor. He didn't die in the arena. And he was a major persecutor of Christians. I mean, he went very far to kill Christians in any way that he possibly could. He killed one of the greats of the church, Polycarp was another one. So we have 3 emperors and 3 major deaths of people. Septimius Severus came after him. And the last one and the worst one of all was Diocletian, who said, they said that he actually killed more Christians during his time than all the other ones combined. He had a master plan to completely eradicate Christians from the face of the planet. So he made it an all-out intention to kill every Christian, no matter where they were, and what they did. Some of the accounts, historical accounts, were between 5 and 6 million Christians killed in that period of time in the effort to stamp them out. So that's 10. That's 10 emperors. So they're thinking that this phrase could be, instead of that you will suffer persecution for 10 periods or 10 epochs, and faithful to the point of death, and will give you the crown of life. And then this last one, 11 and 12, we're going to end up. He who has ear to hear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Again, this is for the individual. He who overcomes will not be hurt by the second death. So we're going to have to end after we do this, but this is really important. So what is the second death? There's a phrase in the church. This is an old phrase in the church. I had forgotten it. Actually, I learned it in Curcio, which is a spiritual movement that happened in the 60s and 70s and 80s and into the 90s. And in Virginia, I was the spiritual director of Curcio for the Diocese of Virginia for about 7 or 8 years, until it just simply disappeared like a puff of smoke. No more Curcio in the Diocese of Virginia. Very, very sad. And you know, the strange thing with talking about spiritual oppression in the church, I can't really figure out why. I retired as a spiritual director for the Curcio, Virginia. A friend of mine took over, and the Curcio lasted 6 months, and it was over. And it was a very strange last year and a half, and a very strange ending to the Curcio movement in the diocese. Just spiritually dried up in a very weird way, very disturbing way. But that phrase came out, and that phrase goes like this: born twice, die once. Born once, die twice. So this is what is happening and what is talked about here. This is what Jesus talked to Nicodemus about, right? The second birth. Anyone born, they'd be born again. Remember, Nicodemus says, how can this be? Can a man go back into his mother's womb and be born again?
Is that where the born again movement came from?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, born again. I mean, this is a in the 70s and 80s, the phrase born again became almost fighting words. People got like those crazy Jesus freaks saying born again, and the problem was that most of the people, this is sad, most of the Christians who really came out hammering the Jesus freak movement at late 60s and 70s, and even into the 80s, and got all mad about the term born again, got mad because they didn't realize it's right there in their own Bible. They didn't realize it because they never read it. They didn't know it. They didn't realize this is Jesus said, be born again. And the Jesus movement, people were just saying the same thing that Jesus said, and people didn't understand it. So this is the same thing. In Revelation, I'm going to jump ahead real quick for you. I know we got to end, but we don't want to end in this. Revelation 20.
And there's, have you found it?
Yeah.
This 20.
That one was so confusing to me.
Okay, it says 20.
I think I found it was part of
Oh, shoot, no, it's not.
that was a bumper sticker from the
Second death. Okay, yeah, here it goes.
Right.
So
I
it says,
found it.
Then death and Hades
this is
referring to the lake of fire. The lake of fire is the second death. So this is we're gonna get to this place. This is in chapter 20 of the book of Revelation. So what everybody whose name is not found in the book of life, which we're going to get to in the next letters, everybody whose name is not in the book of life at the time that this event comes up in the 20th chapter of the book of Revelation is going to be thrown into the lake of fire and die. That's the second death. So it's saying Jesus is saying right here, you will not be hurt at all by the second death. In other words, you'll be written in the book of life. You will not experience this thing that's coming along. You all are born again and you will not die again. So born twice, die once. That's what this phrase is about. Is about the apocalypse, the being thrown into the lake of fire and experiencing the second death. All right, we're done. Holy smokes, that was great. This is so exciting. Oh my goodness.
7. 2 out of 7.
2 out of 7.
5 to go.
And your kitty cat is so interested. Look behind your shoulder.
I wore her out a little while ago. We had this play time, and she got.
What'd you do? A laser pointer with her or something?
Yeah, I got a little string
Oh,
around. I did that this afternoon, and then Jenny came home, and the dog went crazy, and so they've been really having a lot of good times together.
yeah. I miss furry friends in my household.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all. We're looking at jumping into Pergamum next time, and moving on. We'll get through the rest of 2. That is for sure. You want to read ahead? Go ahead. See, it's very exciting. And if not, then we will look forward to it when we get to it together. All right.
Right. Good
God
night.
bless you all. Have a wonderful night. Have dreams about Revelation and all the exciting things.
Good night. Have a
Y'all
good
take
night.
care.
What's that?
You gonna read for a minute?